Oliver Philpott, welcome to Milestone Bellanova's
Thanks, Mark. Good to be here.
Sumptuous boardroom, and particularly an up-close interview with Business Insider.
Thanks.
You've been here before, but we've not talked about your journey as much as I'd like to talk about it today. You've had time to settle in, you've found a good barber, and you've taken on a couple of extra responsibilities. We might come to that a bit later. We won't even mention your barber. The opportunities that surround you now, where are they for Ollie Philpott and Central Coast Tourism?
Look, there's plenty of things that we want to achieve this year. There's a lot of work on our plate at this point, and I think we've gained some really good momentum over the last 2 years. But the key opportunities for us is to seek new areas where tourism products can be built on the Central Coast, where they can be developed. We need to work closely with councils on their LEPs and DCPs for those purposes, because I'm of the view that ultimately to attract the new markets that we need to see the growth here on the Central Coast, we need to deliver new experiences.
Can we just talk about the LEPs? And are they moving? Are you getting some traction with councils to make that happen?
Yeah, it took a while for us to get some traction with them. I guess there's an extraordinary amount of consultation that needs to take place. My personal view on the LEP was that it was held up, and I think everyone agrees with that, particularly in the Gosford, while are about to embark on theirs. We'd like to see the process go a little bit quicker, but of course there are so many processes that need to go through. There are things in the Gosford LEP that's about to be adopted that will be positive for tourism, and that's why we want to see it adopted very quickly. So what we've done is work closely with the council to ensure that there are objectives around tourism growth in the LEP to begin with. And there's a whole range of things that will affect.
Are they there at the moment?
They weren't there initially, they're now there after some negotiation.
How do you measure that? Are they night visits or days?
There's no goals of such within the LEPs. What it is about is whether the councils believe that tourism is part of their future.
Whether they're tourism friendly.
That's right, and given the history of investment Gosford has made in tourism, you would have thought that was a no-brainer, but it took some convincing to get those sorts of objectives in there, but we're very pleased with the response we've had, particularly from the General Manager.
Okay, then continue on, the LEPs are coming along. Where are the other challenges and opportunities then for your next 12 months?
I think the other area for us is to grow our brand. We still have some struggle with our brand and perception of the Central Coast. Central Coast Tourism is really the custodian of the Central Coast brand once we leave the Central Coast. And that's been somewhat of a challenge, I guess, to ensure that our target market, which is primarily Sydney, short breaks out of Sydney, understand where we are, who we are and what we're promising. And that's been a real challenge, I think, for us over many years, is to establish that brand, and that's why last year we rebranded our organisation and some of our destination marketing efforts.
Okay. Yeah. Where does that friction come from? I'm presuming the individual operators all have a different view, or...
Well, I think I'm not sure there's friction as such. I think the destination itself has cried out for leadership for a long time, and I think we've provided that from a destination marketing point of view. Over the last 2 years, I think we've been successful in unifying certainly the tourism operators and the tourism industry, and even beyond that, being able to bring in those peripheral to the industry itself and support our cause. I think now that we've set the vision through the destination management plan and its implementation, we're seeing a lot of support behind the things that we're doing. So I don't think there's much friction amongst the industry itself for what we're proposing and what we've started implementing.
And you've had spare time. You've become chairman of It's
the Australian Tourism Export Council New South Wales branch. Okay. It's a branch of the National ATEC Board, which is predominantly around working with operators who are interested in international tourism and opening up the trade regulations and the policy regulations to make it easier to trade internationally and bring in international visitors.
Okay. And that plays an important role on the Central Coast as well.
Sure, it's a component of our overall visitation is international marketing. It's a personal interest of mine, international marketing, given my history with Tourism Queensland, working with the international offices. And that's one of the reasons why I got involved, but I've also obviously got involved because it opens up contacts for the Central Coast.
I've had a discussion with Barton Lawler, and I know international plays an important part in Glenworth Valley.
Yes.
What are other destinations that kind of could benefit from that international?
Well, we have a range of products that have potential. The difficulty is getting the critical mass, a number of products that can pull together itineraries that can compete with the likes of the Hunter Valley and Port Stephens. So Glenworth Valley is a strong product, particularly from a groups and conferencing perspective. They can handle, and we're talking groups from China, we're talking big business of 500 plus delegates in one hit. 4 or 5 of those in a year, you've got a fairly good business going along. So, it's an attractive proposition from a return on investment point of view. What we need, and this is precisely why I'm so eager on new product and new zoning to allow new product to be built or established on the Central Coast, is we need that critical mass to support the leaders that we have there at the moment, such as Reptile Park, Glenworth Valley. Those guys are out there fighting the fight and investing in international markets. We need more products behind them to support their messages.
Okay. Chris King, part of the team's had a significant impact. Chris has an impact there wherever he goes.
Absolutely.
But, his plans for, or his disciplines plans, I guess, for 2012, is there stuff that we should be aware of?
There is. Look, Chris's role was created on the back of a range of research that we did and feedback from our members. He's been in the role for a year now and certainly had success immediately. We've established an events management framework, or an events attraction framework at the least, with the councils. And predominantly Chris's role was to attract new business to the Central Coast, new tourism events. And he's done that. We've seen the acquisition of the SEGRA conference. We've seen the New South Wales Rugby Union Championships. We've seen the World Youth Baseball coming, and we've got a couple of announcements that we hope to be able to make in the next couple of weeks. So there's no doubt that he's working in the right space at the moment. My vision for that particular role is to continue to pitch regularly to events that we've identified in a list that we've prioritised. And quickly I think we'll see the value ongoing of that role, but also Chris's role is to coordinate the Central Coast Events Alliance, to assist people who are running events on the Central Coast to network, to schedule their events correctly, so there's less duplication, less conflict. But we also need Chris to be working in a place where he's attracting conferences and business events on behalf of some of our larger accommodation providers. So, Chris has been charged with a very significant role and he's doing a great job.
Yeah. With those, the management of the local events or the events that are in place, there appears to be more discipline amongst those operators now, which wasn't there 3 years ago. Has that been a focus of your management to I guess draw some discipline to those events?
Well, it certainly has for me. I'm not sure directly in the events that they're managing that I've had a direct role in that, but certainly in establishing a framework on how the destination itself can deal with the events. That's something I set a vision for some time ago, and central to that was the Events Alliance. I think what we've seen is people understanding that event management is not only about them going about their business, but also making those connections, networking with people who are sharing their challenges. We've got council involved in those sessions as well. So rather than the process of starting an event and then going to council through the paperwork, there's another opportunity to hold a relationship that's perhaps a little less conflictual, and they can share those sort of learnings in that environment and apply them when they're actually coming to work with council on their event. So, I'm pleased to hear that because I think from an outsider's point of view, I think we've got better disciplined. It seems to me there's feedback that this is working, so we're going to continue with it.
And with that discipline comes visibility, I think.
Right.
They're actually now coming to you guys saying, yeah, these people can help.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to test it with the Sevens and the Rugby Union.
That's right.
The Sevens.
That's right.
Ollie, you're a driven bloke. Where do you get your inspiration from?
It's a good question that I haven't really pondered that much. Now I'm reflecting on it. I guess, yeah. I guess my father was very successful in the area he was in. I've always been motivated ever since I was young. I was always feeling successful at school. Started my career young and was blessed, I guess, in a sense, to have people who looked after me and mentored me. Got some great experience early, and that really served served me in the way, you know, just opened up the opportunities that I had, and people responded to the way that I was managing the projects I was, and I was very lucky to be able to be promoted so quickly in my career. So I think it's just innate. If that's an answer, it just comes to me.
I think I'm a fan of mentors, or and it's over mentors, but just friends or associates you can talk to, and I think that's what's growing on the Central Coast as well. I think there are barriers coming down all the time.
Right.
So we can all benefit from that. We can all benefit from that. If we look at the numbers now that you're controlling, if we say, okay, I'm not sure the market size of tourism for last year, but if we look out 5 years, what would you like that number to be in 5 years' time?
Well, at the moment we sit at about 1.2 million overnight visitors to the coast every year, which is valued about $750 million in economic expenditure from the visitor economy. So there's no doubt we're the most, if not the most, one of the most substantial industries as far as spend goes on the Central Coast. That's not always been that way. It has declined over recent years, apart from the last year where we saw an increase. So I'm charged with seeing that increase be consecutive over many years, and ultimately I'd like to get to the point, I think, realistically over the next 5 years we could aim for 1.5 million overnight visitors. That's another 300,000 visitor nights annually. I think that's a challenge, but I think it's within our grasp. But again, it comes back to, do we have the capacity as a destination to grow new products that are going to attract new markets? Because people are pretty familiar, well, those who have visited the Central Coast are familiar with it. We need to provide that constant stimulus.
Freshness.
That's right, for these short breaks to continue, because that is our market, and that's why events are so important. But we need to really get behind people who are saying, hey, I've got an idea for a new tourism product, whether it be an attraction or experience. Our councils need to provide them support to get in the market and to be able to trade and sell. And ultimately, you know, I hear a lot of people say the coast is so fantastic. Yeah, there's no doubt it is. But where we fail against our competitors is that we don't have the critical mass of saleable product. We've got a lot of public space, we've got a lot of beaches, we've got a lot of green space. But if you compare our saleable products to Port Stephens, for instance, we constantly get outperformed. And ultimately, that's where I think we can steal some market share, is the businesses going up the F3 every day. And we're working on that now. We've got some really good operators, particularly in people like Coastal Liner, who are critical for the future of the Central Coast, who can package our experiences together. And I think there's a strong case to steal that market share from our competitors.
We've interviewed Sandrine from
Treetops,
Tours, Treetop Adventure Parks, I guess.
Yes, yes.
One of those products, and there would be significant more. If you've got an idea, they should come and talk to you about where it goes from there.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people assume that regional tourism organisations are predominantly about marketing, and whilst we do that, we, and particularly myself, get involved in a whole range of planning, policy development, regulation issues, and working on people's behalf with councils, with Destination New South Wales, and with a whole range of agencies, really, to ensure, one, they can get established, and two, once they're established, they're selling.
We're talking about gaps in our offer. Are there things that stand out that you wish we had here?
Yeah, there is, absolutely. I think one of the reasons why we see so much business going north to Port Stephens is because of their waterfront offerings and the way that they interact with the water, with their dolphins and their cruises. Certainly we have some of those on the Central Coast, but there's not a concentration of those in a single point. And I've advocated for a long time that if we see a re-establishment of the Gosford Landing, that needs to be a primary exit and entry point for cruises on the water. And we've of course already got an operator there doing that. But my view is that to really attract that market, we need several operators offering different packages. So I think those water-based activities we do well, but they're spread out. If we can have a single point of a hub where that's concentrated, I think we'll drive the volume business in the group market from Asia that we see going north. So that's an obvious one. I think we've already got a strong offering in soft adventure product. You know, we've got skydiving, helicoptering, we've got aquafun, we've got all the things you can do at Glenworth, Treetops you've mentioned. There is already a really good offering, and I think we need to continue down that path of carving out our product mix as a soft adventure precinct. So those are the two obvious ones that I would see. One is a strength that we need to build on, one is a gap that we need to fill.
Okay. You recently got a grant for a mobile device application, I think.
Yes.
How's that progressing?
Look, it's going well. It's a grant that's been provided to AdIQ, who are working with Optus in conjunction with Wyong Council, and we're a pilot destination for them. The idea here is to deliver tourism operators a very cheap way that they can turn their website into a smartphone-ready website, as most banks and other providers have already done. So it's technology that we need to acquire. Optus and AdIQ are currently working out their business model and finalising how that works, and the idea is once it's been established in the tourism industry, it'll become a product that perhaps Optus will use off its shelf nationwide. So we've been lucky, we're a pilot destination that's progressing well, and hopefully by the next 6 months we'll have a number of our operators and members on the Central Coast using this program.
Excellent. Well, if we want people to get here faster, what about a fast rail or a second airport? Do you have any opinion on those?
Certainly do. Perhaps the airport first. My view is you look at the experience of Sunshine Coast or the Gold Coast. When the airports were established, that brought in interstate visitation and over a longer time international visitation. If the objective of this destination is to become a growing tourism region, which is certainly what I'm charged with, then an airport is something we have to advocate. We can establish better marketing and better branding and a higher profile with an airport in place on the Central Coast than without it. And I think you would see the tourism visitation, the destination explode if an airport was to ever come to the Central Coast. So we're certainly strong advocates, but we're also realists. I'm not sure if we're any closer than we were 5 years ago to that. As far as fast rail goes, again, it's something about accessibility to the coast and connectivity. Again, we're advocates of all of that. I think if we had the choice of the two, we'd probably lean towards the airport to begin with, but there's no doubt fast rail is something that we'd advocate as well.
When we talk about wrapping up, we talk about a rant. We should give you an opportunity to get something off your chest, Ollie. What would you like to get off your chest?
Well, I've pondered this, thought it might be coming, but I guess as an outsider coming to the Central Coast and having experienced what I have in the tourism industry across states, I guess my one bear bug about the Central Coast is we constantly look inwards for solutions. We seem to have this understanding that for some reason we're the centre of the universe and no one else has dealt with the issues that we're trying to deal with. That's quite frustrating for me. I think we need to more regularly and consistently look outside of the Central Coast, use the experience of others, lift our profile, lift our thinking, unify across the Central Coast, join partners with people who are sharing the same sort of difficulties, because ultimately at the end of the day there's so many solutions that have been implemented to our problems elsewhere, and I think it's an obvious one that many people don't look to, and this constant parochialism is what I'm frustrated about. So I've tried to bring that into our business and into the tourism industry. You know, I'm constantly appealing for colleagues of mine in the industry and our members to make contact with people in different states, look at how Cairns works from a tourism industry point of view, look at how the Gold Coast works, because therein lies a lot of solutions.
It's a big question. We talked briefly about the 14 chambers,
right,
and the opportunity to get them all on the same page. Do you take them away en masse and say, look, let's go to Cairns and let's look at what happens there, or are there opportunities?
We would probably consider doing that for specific projects. And you know, there are examples of things that we would do that for certain tourism product developments. But you mentioned the chambers. I think I was astounded when I arrived here to go to all 14 chambers on the Central Coast and find them talking largely around the same issues. I think, you know, it's a skill.
To themselves.
To themselves, absolutely. I think it's a skill, but it can be done to unify those groups, make sure that their local needs are being met, all those things are being discussed, that they feel are important, but also to overlay the issues that everyone needs to address. And I think that just takes a strong leader and someone who can balance those two. So any sorts of consolidation, amalgamation on the Central Coast, I'm a fan.
We too easily talk about the region and then still keep our silos happening. We're against those. We'll try and break them down.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, mate.